Hey YouTube, what's going on? Today I want to talk about Stephen Fry. He is an incredible actor and has made an appearance in all of my favorite entertainment programs, including 24 and The Hobbit, in which he was amazing.
He's also a major social critic and human rights activist, having done countless good deeds and raised untold thousands for charities and offered hope to people who have some form of psychopathology, as he himself is manic depressive, i.e. he has bipolar disorder. Brilliant actor hardly cuts the surface with this individual.
Now I want to make it very clear this video isn't meant to bash him. I mean, just look at him. He looks like your happy, jolly uncle who comes over for Thanksgiving and Easter. But it's Stephen Fry, who is open about his atheism, said some very strange things that caught my attention. The interviewer asked him, what happens if you're wrong? What happens if you die and you reach heaven and God is there? What would you say to his face? And Stephen responded that he would tell God that he was evil and a monster and that he wouldn't want to enter that sort of heaven. And you know what? I don't want to misrepresent his words, so let's take a look at exactly what he had to say.
How dare you? How dare you create a world in which there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world which is so full of injustice and pain? That's what I'd say.
And you think you're going to get in
No,
on that?
but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to get in on his terms. They're wrong. God who created this universe, if it was created by God, is quite clearly a maniac. Utter maniac. Totally selfish. What kind of God is he? It's perfectly apparent that he is monstrous, utterly monstrous, and deserves no respect whatsoever.
Now here, the biggest irony to me is that we have an atheist who doesn't believe in God, who would still blame God for all of the pain, injustice, and suffering going on in the world.
It was a hypothetical. The key word which the interviewer utilized was the word if. How is that irony? If Stephen Fry was faced with a deity that claimed to be all perfect, say the God of the Bible, this is what he would say. He even clarifies this by going on to mention the other gods, for example, the Greek gods. We are abstract thinkers, capable of holding a hypothetical, or at least most of us are. This does not mean a person accepts said hypothetical, but they are discussing, for sake of argument, the if, which the interviewer, not Fry, the interviewer brought up. So please, just get that straight.
I don't point this irony out to bash Stephen Fry or any atheist, but just because the logic over my head, I don't get that. That would be like me discovering that Santa Claus is real and then blaming him for the present I got this past Christmas that I didn't like.
Yes. So what? What is your point? The hypothetical is if X was proven to exist.
That sort of logic doesn't make sense. You can't blame someone who you don't think exists for a problem that you or the rest of the world has.
If X exists, that is literally the hypothetical. If X exists is key. The fact that you're claiming that Fry is being illogical, whilst you cannot understand the basis of holding an abstract hypothetical, is the greater irony here. Fry is stating if he died and found himself facing a god which claimed to have started the world and been all-powerful, this is what he would say. How is that so hard for you to grasp?
But you know what? Unlike Christianity, atheism has no solution for the pain and suffering in this world.
Agreed. Atheists do not. People do. Humankind does. An atheist's absence of theistic belief does not affect how they live their lives. Only their personal philosophies or political alignment can dictate this. Humanism is a philosophy that Stephen Fry is a great advocate of, has solutions which are based in treating all human beings with the same human decency as we ourselves would like to receive. Thus your point is utterly irrelevant.
If atheism is true, and if there is no God, then we live in a universe of random electrons and selfish genes. Some people would be lucky genetically, and some people wouldn't be. There would be no rhyme or reason to anything, and that would also mean that at the end of the day, there would be no justice to anything either. If the universe is impersonal and randomly generated, then we lose any sense of ultimate good and evil, ultimate justice. Without God, the universe out there is ultimately indifferent and impersonal to any of our concerns. Atheism's answer to pain and suffering is tough luck, deal with it. Bad things happen and you just have to move on.
Citation, please, as being an atheist means no such thing. All it could be extended to mean is that in an absence of theistic belief, no meaning may be found in said deity's non-existence. That is all. There is everything else to live for, and we are free to construct philosophies which will serve us not just as individuals, but as a social collective, for we are a social species which thrives in interaction. The fact is that God's existence would offer nothing more. An is cannot result in an ought without the personal formation of oughts from our values. A God existing offers no more meaning to life than a God not existing, and you have to show otherwise before you can make this claim.
And you know what? That doesn't jive with me. That's not something that resonates or something that I can relate to, because I have a sense of purpose in my life, and I'm sure you have a sense of purpose in your life. And if the universe is just an accident, if it's all indifferent, then ultimately it means that our lives are purposeless. And that's not something that I accept, and that's not something that you should accept either.
That is a pure appeal to emotion just thrown in with your personal incredulity. Fact is, even if there were no meaning in this godless world, that would not change the very fact that there is yet no evidence for said God. Moving on, meaning is constructed. There is certainly no universal meaning handed out by a deity. How do I know this? Everyone has their own meaning. Just ask them. Some want to further physics, others want to heal people, more want to better humanity, and they live by that. Others merely want to go and live their life and enjoy it, and do so with their family. And so that's their meaning. Others are free to just go on and live by their own and just enjoy life going through it solo. Fact is, if there was a universal meaning given from one source, then we could conclude that the goals we form are meaningless. So even your own emotional blackmail backfires on you rather aggressively.
And you know what? Maybe that's why Stephen Fry is so angry at the pain and suffering going on in this world. Here's the thing, if there is no God, then there is no evil because everything's just indifferent, right? But Stephen Fry is actually calling pain and suffering evil. So therefore he's acknowledging that something good must exist.
Evil is an abstract term utilized by people to convey a topic. To a humanist, a person that stands for the betterment of humankind, free of suffering and pain, these two things, i.e. suffering and pain, could be viewed as evil. However, even if Fry had not been humanist, he could have taken your own assertions and turned them on you. Your God claims to be all-loving, powerful and knowing. Yet, as loving beings, we can see that the world would be formed in an uncaring or malicious fashion. So by your own qualities, without acknowledging Fry's humanism, you still have no argument.
C.S. Lewis actually made this great analogy that you can only recognize a curvy line if you've seen a straight line. There's also the analogy that if a man falls into water, then he feels wet because he's not a water animal. But if you take a fish, the fish doesn't understand or realize that it's wet because it belongs in the water.
Oh, please do go on. I am certain that this shall be grand.
In other words, you can't say that evil exists or that pain and suffering are evil unless you believe in good or unless you believe in a greater sense of justice, which in my opinion can only come from God.
Which is why you fail intellectually. Unlike Fry, you cannot entertain even the hypothetical that his sense of right and wrong, good or evil, comes from his humanism, which stems from his human empathy. This is contrary to him. He fully grasped the hypothetical of a deity and gave a valid response within that. But you just cannot. This is reflective of your mental inability, not anyone else's.
It makes much more sense to be outraged as a Christian towards the pain, injustice, and suffering in the world than it would be if you were an atheist. Because if you're an atheist, then what difference does it make? Isn't the universe just indifferent to it all? The outrage that Stephen feels would be understood by God, but it would not be felt by an indifferent, randomly generated universe.
Correct, in that the universe as a whole really could not give a damn, dear. But we are human beings. We have higher cognitive functionings. We empathize. We connect. The universe doesn't give a damn. We do. Stephen Fry, as a human, particularly as a humanist, is outraged, not as the universe. The question was not, how would you, as the universe, feel about X, but how would you, as Stephen Fry, feel about X? That is your malfunction.
And finally, I think that Stephen has a very flawed view of Christianity. Let's take a closer look at one of the things he said.
How dare you? How dare you create a world in which there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world which is so full of injustice and pain?
Now, based on that clip, you can see that at the core of Stephen's argument, he believes that the universe and the world exists as God intended and created it to be. But if you're a Christian, you know that isn't true. You know that we believe after the fall of mankind, nothing is as it should be. That is the point. That is one of the central tenets of Christianity, that the world was so broken that God had to come into it with love and grace to fix us and to give us hope for a future. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm not saying that I know all of this is a fact. I'm just saying that this is what I believe and this is what makes sense for me.
And here is why it is total bollocks. You are naturally referring to the fall of man. Now, there are many ways to tackle this argument. 1. Fry was rather ambiguously saying us. Us could mean all of humanity throughout your very inaccurate biblical account of history, including Adam and Eve. Or it could mean all of us today, the people suffering now. Starting on the latter, the idea of original sin in itself is a vile one. The notion that a person can be punished or tortured or killed for the actions of their apparent forebears is sickening. To kill a person is wrong. To kill a person for something they did not do is wrong beyond comprehension. And yet you think that your God letting thousands starve, among them countless children who have done no harm, is okay because humanity supposedly wronged God's pride. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, what happened following the fruit's consumption was all within his power, his control, his urges and his wants. As for the former, it is equally as vile for the facts that you just claimed that to know wrong or evil, you must also know about good. Yet prior to eating the fruit, there was no wrong or evil, ergo also no good. Ironically. But what this also means is that they did not know which actions were right or wrong, which action was good or evil. However, they are apparently punished for this inbuilt arrogance that God gave them, this ignorance. If you design something to fail, don't become a total bastard when it does. You have no argument in the fall of man.
But you know, at the end of the day, instead of trying to point fingers and place blame on why there's suffering in the world, we can all contribute to make this a better place.
Which is exactly what Fry does as a humanist, far more than you ever have or likely will. Yet in this case, he was asked a question and he responded. How the hell does the simple concept fail to register? It really does not cease to amaze me just how something so simple can escape you. I just guess we'll never know. Oh, and by the way, before you think about responding to this video, a half-assed comment ignoring the facts doesn't really cut it. Part 1 of your comment ignores the fact that Stephen Fry is very specific about the God as claiming itself to be the perfect one which created the universe, as clarified by mentioning the other gods, i.e. the Greek ones. Thus your present remark completely fails. Point 2. It's a hypothetical by definition. Your response is, well, I find it weird for a person to answer a hypothetical if it's only a hypothetical. That just doesn't do anything. Point 3. There is no irony. You've made it up completely even though you show Fry's video. You still change what he says, whether you're doing so consciously to lie or simply as a fool who can't understand what he is saying. The fact is, it's over.